we have any public comment?
I have a question. I'm here to talk about concerns about the school, and I don't know if it was on the agenda or not.
Yeah, and maybe discuss that as part of the budget discussion.
So even though it's not coming, I mean, I want to talk about the whole elementary and secondary. So even though it's not listed as an item, we can talk about it during the budget.
Well, 2 minutes.
If you can do it in 2 minutes.
I would
Or
certainly
as we-
state my questions in 2 minutes.
Okay.
I thought yeah, I did ask it the last meeting, but it's not on there.
Well, it's the public is only 3 people or 4 people. You might not have to in those 2 minutes.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, my children were educated in the school and they got a fabulous education. I'm also hearing that we have very small numbers in the school. And I think, like, it was at this meeting that people helped me realize that maybe our connectivity issues in town are impacting our, whether or not young families are moving into town or not. But it just sounds like a very small number of children for the building.
Yeah.
So it just feels like something we should be talking about because it feels like a problem. And that's why I'm bringing it up. I don't know if there's a process, if there's decisions we have to make coming up soon, or if this is sort of a long-term question we're going to work on. I'm not really sure how to jump in or how to help.
I hope that the school committee is going to be engaging in a strategic plan that would look at this, but it also makes sense for respective towns to take a look at it, because there's been some reluctance, and I agree with you. So I think we can, without waiting for the school committee to act, I think as a town we can look at these things, but it hasn't been very systematically or formally done, and I think things that I've learned so far are that when a district allows a choice kid in, they've got them for their career. My understanding is that if a school facility is closed, that deal is off. And I also think that, and I think this is true, that the district agreement says that in order for any of the elementary schools to close, that town has to agree. I think that power was given.
So it would go to a town meeting vote. Do the other towns also have to agree
Yes.
to a change, because we're a regional school district, right? So it involves an agreement from all the participating towns. That sounds complicated.
Yes, and I believe that the reuse of the building is seriously limited, given that 70% of the funding was from state for educational purpose.
And that's not been paid off?
Well, it's been paid off, but it's I believe there's still covenants
Oh,
with
okay, so there's
with respect to the use, so
complication.
it's not. I've been thinking that maybe it makes sense for all the towns to give their buildings or sell them for $1 to the district, and put the district in a position of not playing the capital versus operating costs, and everybody dividing up to see at every expense that might be arguable how we could put it off to somebody else, and have the district thinking as a whole. It would get rid of the problem of deferred maintenance becoming unarguably a capital expense. I get a feeling that's Patricia calling in, and it's not ringing here. I don't know. It's not coming in on that phone, that's for sure. Let me find it. I need to find the number.
big discussion and bound to be very emotional and not really anything that's ever gonna fit in a 2-minute discussion here. So I'm just wondering, does the select board have a plan for where to go with this?
We're sort of working on it. We're waiting to see what comes out of the negotiations with the school committee. David's on the school committee, so he's pretty much up to date on the latest. But all the towns are concerned, well, mostly Berniston. Berniston and Gibbs, the closest ally.
They're concerned about the rise in cost of participating in the regional agreement.
Yes, John,
I'm curious, how many students do we have total K through 12?
I think about 40.
No, that's K through 6.
900 and something. Okay.
In Warwick?
Oh, in Warwick?
The K through 6 is like 50.
It'll
Is
be
it
57 when we return after vacation.
Okay.
And 19 of those students come in from other towns and bring money to our district. So we're doing something incredibly right to have 19 parents transport their students to our town every day and pay to have them come to our schools.
So the total was
Those are going to
57 with,
right?
you said there was 57 total?
Yeah,
K through
when we
12?
come, no,
K through
just in the
6.
elementary school.
In the elementary school.
Is 57?
It's after vacation, it's supposed to be 57 with 19 of those, either choice or tuition.
I also just wonder if there are any studies that relate connectivity in town to young populations and families. Because I know we're all talking about becoming more connected and investing in
Is,
that.
Well, we heard an opinion at the first broadband info meeting from Jim Draw, who was the selectman in Cummington, and they've decided to close their school as of the end of the school year, their elementary school. And he felt the big reason was that young families were choosing not to move in because of not having access to high-speed internet. There's one other source that I think should be looked into some is the town of Leiden spent a couple of years looking at the whole regional issue and trying to decide whether it made
They're
sense
very
for them to
small.
continue. And my understanding is that after 2 years or so of looking at it, they decided that it really did make
Right.
sense to maintain as
Okay,
part of the
so
district
that's a
because.
place we could get some information, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
What I'm trying to find out is how many kids from Warwick there are, not the school
There's
choice.
38 from Warwick in the elementary school.
What
Total?
about
No, there's 38 from Warwick in the elementary school. plus
Not just
8
the elementary, I want from K to 12.
I could probably find it for you, but I wanted to comment on something else first, if I could.
Yes,
The amendment procedure for changing the district agreement is all lined out in the district agreement. And David, I think I'm right about this because I'm reading it here, that it can be amended. And the way that it's amended is that somebody, either the town or the school committee can put forward a petition. And then the district, because right in the district agreement, it says K through 6 have to be educated in their town community. Okay, so you have to, first thing you have to do is amend the district agreement. So it can be done either by petition from the school committee or from the town. And then it has to go to all 4 towns
Martha,
with petition. And then,
yes.
am I wrong about this?
No, I'm talking to Patricia, she's,
Oh, sorry. And then the 4 towns have to vote on it. So 3 of the towns have to pass it, because it takes 3 of the towns to pass an amendment to that. So, there's a lot of things to be looked at, as David said.
Yeah.
Strategic planning is important, and I agree.
Yeah.
But parents have to be involved, teachers have to be involved, because we're talking about kids' lives here. Selectboard has to be involved. And, it's definitely worth looking at, but I'm just saying that that's a procedure.
David, you're saying that the school committee is engaged in this kind of strategic planning?
Has agreed to,
Okay.
recently agreed,
Yeah.
but wanted to hold it off a bit until we get through the selection of a new superintendent.
Yeah, yeah.
And I question superintendent candidates about their ability to lead or engage in the process, and both the finalists seemed interested and confident.
Excellent.
Questions?
So with what Martha just said, it seems, now you said that there's 19 school choice kids in Warwick right now. Are they from other towns within the district?
No,
No, most
No.
of them I think are Orange and Apple, are they not?
If, say, a kid from Bernardston wanted to come to Warwick, would that be a school choice issue? So then you're talking about every kid that doesn't go to school in Warwick, according to this agreement, would be under school choice and cost more money?
if they're, I'm sorry, can I answer that? Because if it's within the district, like, if somebody from
Right, from
Bernardston, Northford,
Bernardston.
or Leiden wanted to come to Warwick, that can be done by coming to the school committee. But to answer your question about whether it's choice, I don't think so. It would just
No.
be the district, right, David?
Right, it would be,
It would not be choice.
be an exception that the school
Right.
committee grants.
And I know that's happened, but it's a
The thing to think about with respect to choice is that our average, per pupil average expenditure is about 15,000, and school choice is capped at 5. So it probably makes sense when you have capacity. That is, you have a teacher, you have a room, you have a desk, you have, it's not adding a lot of cost. So, but it's hard for me to extrapolate going from 40-something kids in the school, or 50-something, to full, and seeing where 5,000 per is really gonna work. Any magic. So the piece that I would like to look at especially is, because I think I've got a reasonable answer that when you close a campus, the school choice deal is off for those kids. What would happen if we took our, we call our foundation students, 700 and something students who live in the 4 towns, and designed a school system to serve just them? And it would clearly involve closing a couple of outlier campuses, Leiden and Warwick, and operating on 3 sites instead of 5, having fewer principals, probably end up with somewhat fewer teachers. I don't know if we got the facilities for it, I don't know what makes sense, but that's something I just like to model and figure out what the impact is. Sometimes you don't have to go to a large scale to reach an economy of scale, but you can right size. I don't know if that's possible for us, but it needs to be looked at.
Do we have the total per grade? How many kids in each class? Because if you're dividing 6 into that total number of 57 and 19, I mean, total 57, you're at a class size of 13.
They're not evenly distributed at all. I
No,
can't
they're
tell you
not.
off the top of my head, but they do not distribute
Are we-
evenly.
Well, I can
Are
tell
we
you,
seeing
5,
class size?
6,
Are we seeing class sizes of like 9?
yeah, 5, 6 right now is 11. And I only know that because my daughter's in the class.
Well, I know like when Wade went to school, Dana was in Wade's class, they were at 13.
Yeah.
5th and
Right
6th.
now, 5th and 6th is small, it's 11. The
Right,
3,
so
4
that's a two
is
kid
bigger,
difference
it's
between-
15, I think.
Right, Wade's in 9th grade
Is
now,
it
so is
18?
Dana, that's a 2-kid difference,
This
so.
is not supposed to be crosstalk, it's for questions. So please address.
So I'm just questioning the numbers per grade, if there's anybody who could get me those numbers per grade.
I have the numbers right here
Okay.
from the school committee. Do you want me to count them?
Yes, please.
I'm sorry, I'm cross-talking.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is from October 1.
Okay.
Pre-K 5, kindergarten 10, grade 1 3, grade 2 8, grade 3 11, grade 4 7, grade 5, 1, and grade 6, 10. So that made 55. This is October 1, so, you know, they could have changed since then.
Yes,
What is the total capacity of students from Warwick? I did not hear that.
120. It was
I
built
mean,
for
from
120.
here in town in our elementary school.
120.
the capacity or the actual?
No, I'm sorry. The occupants, students that we have right now that are enrolled, and of our own students, not school choice students.
57. Oh,
No,
37, 38, 37, 38.
So there's 38 Warwick residential children in our elementary school right now.
And divide by 8, not 6. It's 8 age groups, 4 multi-age classrooms.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comment? Yes,
Are these going to be mailed out to the public, to the voters?
or
We
what,
discussed it earlier.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Excuse me?
I can't see what you're talking about.
Oh, the warrant and the tax for 2016, the same stuff you sent it out. We had discussed it, you guys said you were thinking about mailing them out,
No,
give people a chance to,
no, we're not going to mail them.
you know,
No. We'll have all the information ready well before the meeting, and people will have a chance to read it over.
yes, but there's a lot of people that expect to get something through the mail. They just get the notice, they show up here that day, and then they have 15 minutes to look at it. I think it would just be nice
It will
for
be
the
on,
town.
it will be on the website, so people can look at that, the town website.
Can you send out a notice at least to say it's available there?
Oh, yes,
It's just like a card,
that's a town bylaw. I send out postcards.
to say it's available on the website that they have an opportunity. If I have time, one more question. Does anyone know who actually owns these fiber optic lines?
I don't understand.
What, you mean after installation?
No, right now, they've been, somebody must own them as they're being put on poles.
Are you talking about the middle
Existing.
mile, the existing ones?
The lines that came right into town.
The Mass Broadband Institute owns the NBI 123 network.
Do they actually own the wires, is what I'm getting at.
Well,
You'd have to
Yes.
ask.
Does
Yeah.
Verizon own them?
Think so.
No.
Mass Broadband,
MBI.
MBI actually owns. the
Actually,
fiber optic-
the Massachusetts Technology Collaborative
Parent.
is the parent organization of the Mass Broadband Institute. The Massachusetts Technology Collaborative owns the plant, that middle mile plant, which means the state of Massachusetts owns it.
So the state of Mass owns all these lines.
No, the state of Mass owns the middle mile network that serves 123 western and central Mass towns. They are co-located on poles that in Warwick are owned jointly by Verizon and National Grid.
That's-
The poles are owned by Verizon and National Grid.
mhm.
The grid owns the electrical lines. Verizon owns the telephone lines. And the Mass Technology Collaborative owns the fiber line that runs up Route 78 and goes as far as the school.
Right, the reason I ask is, and tell me if I'm wrong, these are fiber optics right up front here, right? And I see Verizon working, pulling those lines further down.
Well, it wasn't the MBI network.
So it wasn't the fiber optic that they were moving. Did
That would
they
be my expectation,
put down further?
correct? They were working on the telephone lines. I would not surprise, am I speaking out of word? It would not surprise me to learn that they were installing fiber because it's cheaper than copper.
I understand that. That's what I'm saying. If they're installing fiber, why are we installing it?
It's a patchwork. It goes from fiber to copper, back to fiber, and the transitions are difficult.
Okay, thank you.
Any other public comment? Hearing none. Motion to accept minutes of the previous meeting.
So moved.
Second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We gotta do a roll call vote.
She wasn't here,
She's not here now.
Patricia,
She's
Oh,
here.
she's here.
do you want to vote on accepting the minutes? Okay. Do we have any chapter 260? What?
You're supposed to all say aye. That's the
We
rule,
did
right?
say
I with your name.
Your name.
aye. Aye on that.
I know you voted, but.
Chapter 268, do we have any exemptions?
We do not.
Okay. Energy settlement and vote to create electricity special revenue account.
I gave you some suggested motions. I'm looking for, we can discuss it.
David, can you turn that on?
Can you try again, Patricia?
I said, is this something we can do simply by asking the accountant to set up the account?
Well, I'm looking for a instruction, and maybe somebody can make a motion.
I move to create,
And that, I move that we do create an electricity special revenue account and deposit the energy settlement. Are you able to hear that?
It broke up. I've prepared some suggested motions. Why don't we get somebody to sing off the page?
Dr. Morty, go ahead and use that.
Go for it.
I move to create an electricity special revenue account from which to fund the marginal or additional cost of electric power generation resulting from net meter contract breach, and to deposit the AG negotiated settlement proceedings into the account.
Proceeds.
I'm sorry?
You said proceedings, and that's proceeds.
Proceeds, I'm sorry. Into the
Okay.
account.
Second, any discussion?
I have a question. David, you referred, I think, to 7.5 cents a kilowatt hour after you take into account the net metering credits.
That is our power purchase option under the Selectboard solar project. If you recall, years ago, we had a special town meeting, and town meeting authorized the select board to enter a long-term contract with a solar developer who were
Right.
building, and basically for naming rights, we're gonna get paid money.
Oh,
And-
so I'm in the wrong place.
No, you are in the right place, because that's our best option now for buying electricity. The project is supposed to begin construction in May and perhaps come online in the fall. So I'm looking at something with Hampshire Power in the interim. But nobody sells anybody power generation for 7.5 cents, and we have the right to buy it. So I'm negotiating with initially I told Seaboard, we have a contract with Pequog and Soltis, and we don't need to be in on this, and it was basically the same terms. Now that Soltis has gone away, this is our long-term option, provided that it does get built.
Well, my question comes down to is the 7.5 cents dependent upon our purchase of net metering credits, and are those credits safe to provide us the difference between 12.5 and 13 cents or whatever it is currently and the 7.5? Or are they a little flaky, that is, they could change in price?
It's really difficult to get one's head around this, but basically net metering credits are like buying money. And a net meter credit is equal to a certain number of kilowatt hours. And we are able to buy them at a discount, so we pay 92 and a half cents per net metering credit. On this deal, if it's built and it happens, our name is on that meter. And we're gonna have an electric bill with a lot of electricity on it, which we're going to sell back to, we're gonna transfer back to the developer, and they're gonna give us half a cent per kilowatt hour, which is gonna add up to 50 to 60,000, depending on the output of this 10 megawatt array. But the bigger question to me is not so much the veracity of the whole net meter credit scheme, as it is, will these guys finally get this thing built? So, the reason for this fund is we've been paying more than we should be paying for electrical supply for some time, and we will be in the market in the future, and hopefully we'll get back to this low price. But let's talk about whether net metering credits are reliable later, because we're at least 6 months, if not a year, away from testing your concerns.
And the 7.5 cents doesn't depend on their reliability?
Well, we have a contract signed by both parties that says we can buy net metering credits at a discount.
Okay.
And that power will be on a meter that's got our name on it. If it ever
All right.
comes around.
I'll ask you in 6 months.
Okay.
Yes.
David, why is it that the town is entering into an agreement with something, or not entering, but is entertaining an agreement with a resource that's not in place, whereas there are resources out there that you could contract with for interim costs that are cheaper than what National Grid provides right now?
This was an opportunity to get money for nothing.
I understand what net metering is all about.
No, but just forget about us buying any net metering credits. The town of Warwick's name is on a net metering deal that's Seaboard Solar. They're also doing a deal with Wendell, they're doing a deal with New Salem, they're doing a deal with another town I've never heard of. And without buying any power from them, if they come online, we stand to get $50,000 to $60,000 a year over 20 years, just for having our name on the thing. It's a sidebar that we can buy power from that deal too. And that's a better deal for power, 7.5 cents. It's a better deal than anybody will sell you power today.
Absolutely, but what is the town doing now?
We're on the standard offer.
Why?
Lack
of other sources, or is there something
No,
else?
but we
that
were
could
under
choose from?
contract, and we just last week settled, if we had gone out and contracted someplace else, we would have weakened our case for the Attorney General to bring us $22,000 for breach of contract. Now this matter is settled, and we're looking forward. But it was not in our interest to work that hard to mitigate the damages because these guys owed us what they owed us. And the situation was such that the Attorney General became involved.
Just that standard offer is 16.7 cents per kilowatt right now, whereas there's many electrical suppliers that on the generation side that you can short-term contract with at a much better rate.
Yeah, that's,
Which
like
I've
I said, I'm
personally
working
done
with
this at
Hampshire, I'm working with Hampshire Power, but they don't want to do a deal for less than a year's time.
So in the year's time, will we be entering into this tentative agreement with this other company for what you just spoke
We already
about?
have entered into it. The question is whether they're producing it.
Right, so why wait until then when we can do something different and save some money?
Not planning on it, but understand that we could end up, in order to save money over what we're getting now, we could end up with a contract that runs into this other opportunity, and it's a decision to make. We can get a better deal than we have now, without a doubt, no question. But that deal itself might preclude us from, and besides which, we have been made whole by this 22,000. We can buy power for the standard offer, and we're gonna get that price. Now we can only make it better. But my focus has been on getting the settlement, and it was not light work.
Oh, and good work for doing that, and just looking as to where we're going from here as to how else we can move forward. If that's the case, obviously there's other things happening, but in the meantime, short term, is there something else that we could do to just continue to take that 16.5, 7 cents, whatever it is?
Would you consider 1 year short term? Because that's what I'm looking at.
Well, Gulf Electricity right now, for example, is a wholesale generator from Framingham, and they've got a 9-month deal that they're offering right now. So residential, they also offer for
How much?
businesses, 10 cents a kilowatt. So just thinking of other ways, obviously, to just continue to work on our budget.
Well, the standard offer has just gone down 30% too. Right now.
Yeah,
But the winter's over.
thank you.
Yes,
Is this company that we're trying to work out something with, is this solar generated?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, this is a 10 megawatt solar project in Ware.
And just by putting our name on it, we would get 7.5 cents?
Just by the town meeting agreeing to allowing the select board to enter this contract, they're gonna pay us half a cent a kilowatt hour for everything the project generates for 20 years. Because they need a municipality's name on it, because the legislature carved out commercial and municipal and various pots, and they said to all of the power companies in Massachusetts, you must generate, I think it's 3% or 2% of your power from alternate energy sources. And the legislature did in no way intend to create a situation where a town like Warwick could put its name on the project and get money for nothing. But these guys figured out, and others figured out how to do it, and when we went to DOER and the AG's office and the Inspector General, they said, yeah, it's legal, we didn't intend it, but yeah, good for you.
Madam Chair, I'm wondering, I'm a little slow maybe, but I'm wondering how this relates to the motion that's before us, and whether we could just vote on the motion.
okay. All in favor?
Roll call vote.
Nick Archibald.
Aye, Don Maggie?
I, Patricia Lennon.
Okay. Thank you. Warwick Police,
Good evening. I have a letter of commendation that I'm going to be placing in Officer John Stewart's file, and with the board's permission, I'd like to read it.
yes,
This is a commendation in regards to Officer John Stewart II. The citation reads as follows. On Tuesday, March 17th, 2015, Warwick Police Department Officer John Stewart II was on assigned townwide patrol. At approximately 45 minutes past noon, he was dispatched to a medical call. A male party in the woods experienced chest pains and difficulty breathing. The calling party was unable to pinpoint his exact location, and the quality of the cellular telephone call to Shelburne Control, which is our dispatch office, was poor. Officer Stewart, utilizing his knowledge of the area of the call and generalized directions from Shelburne Control, responded and arrived on scene within 5 minutes and began a strenuous hike through a wooded area, often in snow up to his waist, all the while carrying his medical bag, his defibrillator, his oxygen equipment, and at the same time maintaining communication with his shoulder mic radio with his dispatch. Upon locating the patient, Officer Stewart began life-saving medical treatment, stabilizing the patient for eventual transport to the hospital. His calm demeanor, professional attitude, not only on this call, but on all the other responses that he answers to, exemplifies the standards of this department and earns Officer Stewart the respect of his colleagues in the town of Warwick. Good job, and I signed it. This will be placed in his personnel file. He's also being nominated at a state level for life-saving CPR measures. And we'll let you know how that works out. Thank you.
Do you have anything else to report?
No, onward and upward,
Okay.
looking forward. Thank you.
Do we have a motion to sign a letter of commendation?
Actually, need a motion, it seems to me that we're all united in thinking that's the right thing to say and do. If we need a motion, then I move that we.
It's already signed.
I
Thank you.
would sort of like to recognize, at least in passing, the other people involved here, because I understand
That's
there were
true.
20 people involved. So perhaps we could change the letter slightly to do that.
I can make another letter, how's that?
Okay.
That would be wonderful. Okay. So we tabled the motion.
Broadband and fiber to the home.
Letter from the broadband community.
Letter from the broadband.
Thank you.
I can just explain the basics of it. The broadband committee and the Wired West representative decided at the last broadband meeting to recommend to the select board to not bring the issue of the Wired West funding, fiber to the home, to this annual town meeting in May. And we're recommending for right now to postpone until a special election in the fall. One of the prime reasons for doing this is that we feel like the information that we've got is incomplete. And in the interests of, presenting things as carefully as possible to the citizens so that they can make the best decision, we feel like it's important to wait until there's more information available from MBI and Wired West and as it all proceeds.
And we feel there's a very good likelihood that a lot more information will be crystallizing over the next month or two.
I agree.
There are other towns that are also passing on doing it right now. A number of them are going ahead. And it'll be an interesting process to watch and what comes out of that.
I move to reset our consideration of, okay.
You have a question, Tim?
What's this say? I'm not sure I want to do the motion quite this way. Because what I'm concerned about is that they will end up providing us critical information 2 weeks before the vote again. And do it in a timely fashion. Let me suggest this. I move to remove the fiber to the home borrowing article from the annual town meeting warrant with the expectation of a fall special town meeting to consider the matter when more information is available well before that meeting.
Second.
Second the motion.
Any discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
This is gonna be a special town meeting, right? It has to be funded, elected on. Who's gonna pay for it? Shouldn't it come out of the broadband's money?
No.
Why not? They've had it over a year to get this information out to people and everything.
We expect the annual town meeting will be long and intense, and this article itself will be intense. So rather than add this to it, we feel that it's a better use of time to have a separate meeting. And at the time, in the fall meeting, we may even continue it to the spring, to the next town meeting. We have that much time. So it's not exactly set yet, but.
Yeah, I just find that over a year, through all this work, and still haven't figured it out.
No, there are a lot of, it's not a simple matter. It's pretty,
I'm not saying it is.
well,
I'm saying it is by any means. I mean, just, we gotta foot the bill. Why isn't Wyatt West or Warwick paying for that extra election?
Yes, the current broadband committee, all the members were appointed in January. We've had since January to work on this together. The current Wired West representative has been on longer. Actually, the town has been involved with this over 4 years. But in the process, NBI and the state has come up with the money. Wired West did act as an advocacy organization as part of its efforts and helping to secure this money, getting legislators involved. It's a very complicated process. And there have been communication problems. We feel like the NBI and Wired West are working well together. They've had meetings where they've specifically talked about the communication issues. And we feel like it's important that we're able to explain the proposal well to the town, to the residents, explain about the possible tax impact, the benefits, the drawbacks, and go from there.
I agree with everything you're saying. All I'm saying, as an act of good faith by the broadband committee, they get $2,500, why don't they pay for that election? I think it would be nice to have your public who you're asking to do something for you do something for them.
yes.
I see that this town actually has set precedent in the past with the stretch code vote with a special town meeting. It is a valid question. How much does a special town meeting cost?
How much does a postcard stamp cost?
Okay, so when something has value to the town as a whole, I can see, you know, in some instances that, you know, it's worth, you know, the town putting forth that, if that's all it is. So you're talking about like $800 max?
My question is, if you do your special election, special town meeting, and the funding that you're looking for passes, is there not, as a second part of that, doesn't there have to be an election, a vote for some type of an override, which would require an election? The election does cost money. It costs a minimum of $70 an hour to have the personnel available at the polling place. You've got that automark election, the voting machine for the handicapped access that has to be there. So there's a cost to the election, there's no cost to the actual town meeting. But I was under the impression that if your town meeting portion passes, then it has to go to an election to have an override, because if this had gone forward now, you would have had to have a ballot question on your election, on your election ballot. So that does, as part one is your town meeting, but then if that passes, then part two becomes an election. The election has a cost. That would be a basic cost for the election.
Well, the election won't happen unless it passes, first
Yeah.
off. And the minimum is 4 hours for an election, although this board has tended to want longer hours. And it is not required, but we'd be dumber than a box of rocks if we voted this without the contingency of an override, because we would have committed to it, and we will pay the bill, and in order to make this work without the potential of driving the rest of the town to its knees, we need the override. But it is not a requirement, it's just good policy.
Thank you. John?
One factor for the select board to consider is that, and the reason that we were thinking about a fall special town meeting is that it would position us to get the service sooner. There are other towns in our area, notably Shutesbury, Wendell, and New Salem, who are much further along in the process. 2 out of the 3 have already gotten to their 40%. And in terms of cost efficiency, in terms of wiring, that we may well get it sooner if we act sooner.
Madam Chair.
I was just still a little bit confused about the change of heart. I know a couple meetings ago, we were talking about jumping on the bandwagon real quick. We got to get this done now, the type of thing Tom was mentioning. I was just wondering why does it change? Is it? I know that the individual towns get the money granted to them for this project. I was wondering if it's just a change of heart of communications, or is it also the fact are we planning on possibly doing this on our own, or using the money on our own, or we definitely, if we're going to go for it, we're going to go with Wired West?
Well, may
Yeah.
the Wired West project, the way it's set up with MBI, the grant process that's the way that MBI is going to accept an application, has until the end of June 2016. And they did that deliberately so that if towns were not ready for this annual town meeting, they would have the option of a special town meeting or next spring town meeting. We have not had a change of heart about Wired West.
Right.
One of the key pieces of information we have not gotten back, and this is from MBI, is that over a month ago, the town coordinator and the assessors went through all the households in town with to get an accurate count. We got maps from MBI, and they included things such as outhouses and roads that were discontinued, and we dropped by over 100 the amount of houses, which affects how much our project cost is, it affects how much we have to borrow, and we have not been able to get a revised figure. So we can't figure out the tax impact to advise you, well, this is how much it might cost per house, and we just don't want to bring something that's up in the air.
Right.
There's also things in terms of Wired West, in terms of their completing a business plan that we haven't seen yet. And we feel like it's important that we see that, and we really know. We still believe a lot of the cooperative effort that's gone into this and the overall strategy, but we feel like we need more details to be able to...
So the models aren't complete is what you're saying?
Yeah.
All right, it's not a bigger picture, that's all I was really asking.
No.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
The $40 million has been roughly bisected into 2 pots. And a community that goes with a fiber to the home project through this Wired West is going to be able to be subsidized from both pots. One is dedicated to the Wired West project. The other pot is if the community decides can't, won't, doesn't want to go with the Wired West, they can apply to this other half of the money. So we just cut our subsidy roughly in half. I'm very concerned about our ability to meet the FCC definition of broadband, 25 megs, with that short money. It might be possible, but we don't have. Now we have one piece of infrastructure up that would pass that kind of traffic, but certainly not through the weeds and pucker brush that most of us live within. And so the decision about Wired West needs to be made in time to counterplan if that's what happens. And I've got some doubts as to whether anything but fiber will meet You know, we're still a long way away. They haven't issued the grant proposals, et cetera. But we certainly don't want to wait until the last minute. We don't want to take up to next May, because there's definitely more than 6 weeks' work to come up with a counter plan, if that's what the community says it wants to do. And I'm not sure, you know, if they said, Val, you know, the stuff that we're paying for, MBI is paying for, has to meet the standard, it would be one more radio layer that doesn't serve everybody, and it's not a very good solution. But if they say, you gotta bring your whole network up to 25 megs, I don't quite know how to do it.
And I will just add, though it's probably not important at this point, that really the reason we're putting this off is because we don't want to say we don't know. And right now, there are just too many questions to which answers are being put out there, but we haven't seen the data behind them. And, you know, these are our neighbors. We gotta live with them. They gotta live with us. So we just as soon know what we're talking about before we try to sell it.
Thank you.
Hi. I wanted to speak as a speaker. A few weeks ago, it seemed to me that there was no way our 1.6 million could be paid back, and that the system just wasn't going to work right to try to do that. And then I came to some realization about why it might work. Because the cost per resident varies enormously among the various towns, so that Warwick can get paid back because most towns have a much lower figure per resident, if you want to summarize the situation. And so I was all about to switch from opponent to proponent. And then we had a meeting at which we learned that all would become known with the issuance of the business plan, and that presently the kinds of questions about the details of how would 1.6 million be paid back weren't there, but it would all come out of this business plan. And the business plan would appear to the public 2 weeks prior to town meeting. And all I can think from that is these guys are hiding something, because why would they postpone until 2 weeks before the meeting the critical information? So I sank back into my opponent position, and all of this is my explanation for why we need a postponement, and that the proponents can't just come back 2 weeks before the special town meeting and say, here is our business plan, now you know. They can in fact give us right now today the business plan, admitting that it's a draft, but it's there because they were going to present it publicly, I guess, next week. So let's not have a game played in which that business plan that is actually in existence and there and we could look at vanishes until 2 weeks before the special town meeting. Let's use the time so that the public can be informed early on about what's going on. And people like me who are doubters can take our time to read what you've got and ask the questions we have and be confident that our 1.6 million is going to be paid back. End of story.
Yes,
I would just say that the fellow who's putting together the plan isn't trying to hide anything. He has been really honest about what we do and what we don't know. He's also probably been working about 80 hours a week trying to get this stuff together, and there are just so many pieces to it that, you know, it's Plus he's having to do other stuff to bring the program. But I agree, and I think that the elections that are happening at this time are going to force the business plan out. And it may get revised between this period and the fall, but I think things will only get clearer during that period. We will have a business plan because they have to put it out, and even if it isn't done, it'll probably be done by the time we get to the fall. But I don't think Wired West is trying to hide anything from us. I really don't think the intent there is in any way to snooker us.
Do we need to reread the motion or?
I don't think so. I read it, it's as it is here, with,
Well before that meeting.
available well before that meeting, right?
Yes, Tom?
Yeah, to address your point, Nick, one recommendation that the broadband committee has taken to heart, that came from the chair of the planning board, was that we spend the time to really reach out to as many residents as possible. And the suggestion was that we form a Friends of the Warwick Broadband group that would reach out to as many different groups, as many different people in town in advance, so people have time to really digest it and think about it. So,
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
All in favor?
Is this a roll call vote?
Yes, everything
Yes.
has to be.
Henry?
Aye. Nick? Archie? Yay.
Don Maggie, aye. Okay, motion passed. Approve the Poplar Grant Work Plan Project.
If you recall, about a year ago, we got a POPO grant, and it was 34,000 and change, and it has reappeared, and we're gonna run the same work plan. It involves, getting a portion of our guys' salaries. It's not a contractor-driven thing, but it will be trimming and bottle filling and so on. And we don't even have the signed contract back yet, but because this has to be expended by June 30th, and the work plan will be the same as the previous one, we're looking for authorization, so that as soon as we can get the paperwork in hand, we can proceed.
Move to approve the $34,147 quote, POPL grant, unquote, project, and authorize the select board to sign the project. Is that select board or select board chair?
Actually, I think it's the whole select board they like this.
Okay. Authorize the select board to sign the project documents and submit to the Commonwealth with work to be completed by June 30, 2015.
Second. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye, Don. Aye, Don Maggie.
I, Nick, Archie.
Okay. Report on definition of capital for purposes of Pioneer Valley Regional School District.
I'm gonna go very light on this. I'm looking for a memo from my counterpart in Northfield. I haven't seen it, but the town coordinators in the 4 towns met, and it was, as it turns out, something we should do more often, just in general. Our thoughts ran the gamut from Northfield's position, which is our school, we pay for everything, your school, you pay for everything. And I floated, well, I suggested that might be a great idea, since we might close Warwick School and they could pay for everything. The other extreme, I think we should look at selling all of the elementary schools to the district and making education all fit under the same umbrella. One of the problems Northfield's concerned about is with inadequate or inadequately growing operating money, the maintenance issues get deferred, and then they become very legitimate capital expenses because they weren't dealt with if it were all under the school. So those are the two poles. My thinking has adapted a little bit. I think I was very hung up on the linguistics of this is called capital, and what the heck do you mean Venetian blinds are capital? Venetian blinds and window treatments are not capital items. Paint is not a capital item. But if you think in Northfield's terms, where 1991 and prior, each town had its own school, paid its own teachers, paid the principal, had its own school board, and we morphed into pre-K through 12 school. So more on this later, but some thought is going into it. And meanwhile, Berniston's putting a new roof on their gym for $160,000, $180,000 on an emergency basis. They're having a special town meeting in the next couple of weeks. I think at our school we're in pretty good shape. Keep your fingers crossed.
Well, I'm glad some real thinking is going into it instead of all this nonsense about whether changing a doorknob was capital or not, which was where it was when I saw it.
Yeah, we need a policy so there's not all this situational evaluation of who gets done better by going this way or that. It's ridiculous.
Okay. Fiscal year 16 budget. Go through.
How do you want me to handle this? Well, I suppose what I should start with is what I've been looking for from Wired West, which is some kind of presentation of the underlying assumptions. Wage items in general have a 1.5% increase, 1.5% increase. The finance committee is still meeting, and the recommendation column is not in any way firm. This is probably more my budget than anybody's at this point.
Is this, we're discussing at this point?
I'd rather than go through everything, I think I'd rather hit the high points. And the first point to get to would be page 10. And
Bob,
Yes.
you have one more regular meeting before 4.
Yes.
So we can finalize anything that we can't finalize tonight then.
Yes.
Except don't you have to have the warrant posted by 7 PM that day? 2 weeks from today, the annual town meeting is 3 weeks from today. So the warrant's gotta be posted by 7 PM 2 weeks from today. Right?
yes.
So actually, I have the election warrant here for people to sign, but that's just kind of, as I had it. But I know the ATM has to be done.
We might want to meet next Monday. The recommended budget has a projected tax rate of $20.48 and excess capacity of $171,000. That's money the town meeting could vote without having to have an override. Getting to zero is very troubling. The way that this budget has achieved that modest increase in the face of school spending is that our highway grant is the only thing that's been growing. State aid for schools is not growing. Unrestricted aid to cities and towns is not growing. Payment of lieu of taxes is not growing. So after recently buying a new payloader for $125,000 after trade-in, we just today got our FY16 Chapter 90 letter. We have $587,000 available for highway spending. And I am proposing that we allocate about $115,000 of that Chapter 90 money to doing things that in years past we've done out of the tax appropriation. The grant would not pay for patrolling town roads to look for downs or limbs and drainage problems. There will have to be a series of discrete projects that would involve a road and dealing with drainage and brush cutting and graveling or rip wrapping. But I think at the previous meeting I gave you a summary of Chapter 90, and it used to be very constrained. Paved roads only, minimum 3/4 inches of pavement, minimum 500 feet. At this point, graveling, line painting, a lot of things are acceptable expenses. So I've got gravel, stone, cold patch, hot mix, roadside mowing, line painting, a portion of wages that are allocated to those projects. And this is what we did on the pothole grant, which created about $7,000 of savings in the town voted budget that we then allocated to reduce snow and ice. Snow and ice, if you look at today's warrant, is a deficit of $78,000. By the end of the year, we'll probably be able to bring that down by 14 or 15 through the two pothole grants, and I'll be working with the department to see where we can save some money and reallocate elsewhere. I should also note that the governor has signed a bill that allows communities to amortize the snow and ice deficit this year over the next 3 years. Not a very wise idea unless you believe that we're never going to get another winter like this. So I haven't used that trick. We could end up piling up snow and ice deficits and really hurting ourselves. But understand that that's an assumption that we're not going there. We're not going to take the $80,000 of snow and ice deficit, divide by 3, and put it off to future years.
I agree.
So I haven't quite figured out how to express this allocation, but folks need to understand that we're not doing any layoffs at the highway department, but we're running more like a consulting business, and depending on what you're doing, the timesheet will reflect working on the town's dime, or working on this grant's dime, or working on that grant's dime. Haven't had any pushback from Larry on this, but I need to meet with him more, make sure we're on the same page. And it's definitely going to be more work in terms of writing up work plans and submitting them to the state and getting them approved, and tracking, but they proved this year they can do this.
I'd like to point out on page 8 that the estimated percentage increase on the PBRS assessment after we went before them and screamed bloody murder at last year's 8.5% increase is now 9.3% increase. In other words, an 18% increase over the course of 2 years. And if you don't think under those circumstances you have to vote against the PBRS assessment, you're crazy. I recognize that that may be, in the handout here, substantially lower, perhaps as low as 5.2%, yes?
Well, overall school spending is proposed to be up 5.2%, but we do have the school committee meeting Thursday night, and I expect there will be some budget cutting occurring there, although I'm not in the loop for that. The huge increase that spreadsheet, not the page I just handed you, but the spreadsheet shows, reflects the state calculation of our minimum contribution going way up. You can see that our tech school assessment went down by $32,000. And I don't understand ed reform. It's only been around for about 25 years. But part of allocating these expenses, the state does, figures each community's minimum contribution. I don't know what goes into it, but our tech school bill went down $32,000, and as a result of it, our minimum contribution to Pioneer went up 40-something thousand. So the budget numbers that I've plugged in, lacking anything better, once you take out that minimum contribution piece, are up 3.7% for Pioneer. And
You're talking about, that is, once we get it all covered, a 3.7% assessment increase?
yes. Well, no, I mean, it's really the increase that you're seeing, the ugly 9%, but just realize that it was contributed to by the assessment for the tech school going down substantially.
Right.
Basically, you can't save money on schools, you just move it around.
Yeah, but 3.7% is, in terms of days of yore, which are only a couple years ago, I think, way high. So we've still got a problem, no matter how much better it looks than 9.3%.
Yeah, do know that we had like 4 or 5 years when the Pioneer School budget did not increase at all. And every year our assessment went up. And that's because other people paying for our schools, the state, school choice, all of those figures held steady. So it all falls on the towns. If it were a 50-50 situation and the budget went up 1%, it goes up 2% on the towns because it doesn't go up any on the state.
Right. Well, at some point, it seems to me, we're going to have to stop paying PBRS and set up our own little K-12 school, all of Warwick, with the money we're sending to PBRS, which keeps going up 8-9% per year. And alternatively, we could shut down as a town. The direction they're going can't last very long. And unless 2 towns say no to the PVRS assessment this year, they're not gonna get the idea.
Yes, Martha?
Yes, I just want to respond to some of the things that you said. As David said, we are meeting again, the budget subcommittee is meeting on Thursday. These numbers are preliminary. The teachers, there's some optimism of it going down. At the last budget subcommittee meeting, the superintendent identified possibly as much as $100,000 where things could be reduced. And I know you have the details of the budget, so you know there's not a lot of room for reduction. Some of the increases, and I hesitate to say this because the special needs students are very important, but as you know, there is a large expense, and I'm not saying in Warwick, but over the district, course of the district. Every special needs student needs to have sometimes a one-on-one person. And it's expensive, and it's worth it. And I hesitate to say that because SPED, they call it the Special Ed Department, kind of takes it on the chin sometimes, and people get mad about this. But this is a law. This is the law in Massachusetts. You have no leeway on that. And as the budget hearing pages, if you look them over, you'll see that there's a lot of things that actually, some things actually went down. But we worked, I'm just going to comment on the narrative that the district wants more and more and more. We have worked very hard, and sometimes it's good to have a sense of history, how we got places. And I know David mentioned this. The budget, I'm not talking about the assessment, I'm talking about the PVRS budget, was level funded for 3 years beginning in 2009. And of course, wouldn't you know, I lost that page right now. But anyway, it went up, starting in 2012, it went up, I think, 1.14%, and then it went up 1.44%. So the budget itself has not increased any more than was absolutely necessary. It was level funded for a long time, and it was a shock when suddenly they were at such bare bones that they had to go up somewhat. The assessment actually to Warwick in we got these trend figures, but in 2009 was higher than it is now. Meanwhile, state aid has gone down. I didn't want to Xerox this for everybody, but this is really interesting stuff. Transportation has gone down. The money from the state has gone down. So as David mentioned, you've got this balancing act between the town and the state. And we're just not getting the money we were promised. When we regionalized, we were promised to get 100% funding for busing. A lot of the time we got 50%, 60%. We never got 100%. So I think it's good to realize that when you say you want to close the school or run it yourself, you got to do a lot of research on those figures, because you're still going to have the state. You can't just say, oh, well, we don't care about the state. We'll just do this on our own, like a private school. I mean, it doesn't work that way. I don't know, maybe it would be cheaper. I don't know. That's what.
Well, I think you have to
That's what people need
give
to
up
look
the
at.
idea that when state money gets cut, it gets put over on the towns. I mean, that's the obvious thing to do. But you can't do it, because when the state money goes down, it doesn't mean the state's giving the towns more money that they can give to the schools, because of course they're not.
Nor do your
We're more
employers
in the
give you a
same
raise.
boat that the school system is, that the state money is going down. And therefore, Well, we have to get it from somewhere. We need to get it for a school assessment, right?
Right,
That's the
exactly.
logic of it.
I mean, we are the district. First of all, you gotta think about the fact that we are paying 9.79% of district expenses. Warwick pays, Northfield pays 53 and Burnston pays 40 something. I don't know all those numbers. And Leiden pays.
We're actually 9.37.
Okay, 9.37%.
So our share of operating went down, our costs are going up.
And we're getting a lot. I mean, I think that we're getting a lot for our dollar. So I have the opposite view because we're getting all the shared people. We're getting the music and the band and the computer help and PE. We're getting this through the district. And we're not going to get into a big discussion about this because I know it has to be studied. But if you're doing that on your own, you're going to have a lot of expenses that you didn't think about. Every school has to have a certified librarian now. You've been reading in the papers about Mohawk and their problems. Because the state requirements are just unbelievable. And I've got this book here. These are all the requirements of how to run a regional school district and how to, it's unbelievable.
Isn't that something called unfunded mandate?
Those are unfunded mandates.
So,
And I know David mentioned at the last meeting.
can you at some point sue and say, we want the unfunded mandates?
I don't know. I don't know whether you can or
Well,
not, but I just think.
They can't say, okay, the unfunded mandates will be paid by Warwick since we're not paying it. They can't do that either.
Well, I guess they can, because they do. Does anybody else know how that
Not
works?
if we vote no.
Pardon me?
I said not if we vote no. And one other town votes no.
But if you vote no and another town votes no, the budget goes down, and we still have the district agreement. I mean, you do understand the district agreement, which is also, when the district agreement was formed in 1991, everything in it is referenced back to the Department of Education, Massachusetts general law. So you can't just disband the agreement and say, okay, well, next September we're going to do this. It's a long process. And I don't see any appetite for any town wanting to build their own high school. What are you going to do with the high school kids?
What are we gonna do with the Witchworth?
The high school kids.
Well, our voting no, and then it's coming back to another meeting, and our voting no again means your level funding. And take it to the state, we can't do the unfunded mandates because we don't have the money, and see what they say. It's not Warwick's responsibility to pay your unfunded mandate.
But it is.
I just want to say one more thing in the house, because I know other people have things to say too. The numbers, the way the district agreement is set up now, the numbers need to be certified by the school committee. So I just want to say we haven't certified the numbers yet.
What do you mean by that?
For FY16. We'll be doing that Thursday night.
Yes.
And we're meeting in Berniston at 6:30 for budget and then 7:30 for school committee. But anyway, so I just have a question about that. If it is different, if the number is different, the assessment number is different, then that corrected number obviously gets on the warrant, right? So you all meet again, and then it has to be absolutely, well, it's never absolutely definite. It went down last year in July, and it went down again in September. So this will be hopefully going down. over the next few months. But my question is, it has to be, what is it, April 20th? Has to be posted on the warrant, so everything has to be settled by then, right? And the reason it was put off is we don't have the figures yet on the busing, we don't have the figures from the state yet. So Dale Doran asked, I asked the select board, or David, if we could postpone the vote until April 16th. So anyway, that's where we stand on that. I just wondered if I was right about that.
Yeah, that's a provisional number.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just directing this question to David about the technical school assessment that we're obviously contributing to. Do we have many students that are attending the tech school as of now from Warwick?
Yes, but next year, 3 fewer, I believe. So I think we're going from 11 to 8 kids, and that's why the assessment went down.
Has it ever been looked at to, I don't want to say cut the total assessment to the school where you don't have, the kids don't have an option for technical education, but it seems that our share that we're contributing is pretty exorbitant for 11 students, next year 7 students. And I know, like Ms. Morris just pointed out, there's a lot of mandates that we have to pay for, but.
I don't think I said 7.
8, I heard 8, okay, I apologize. 8 students then.
It's the district, the tech school.
Is the tech school part of the Pioneer, or is that a separate district that we're just choosing?
Separate school, higher per pupil costs. And from the state standpoint, part of the mix in figuring out how much we have to spend on education in terms of our minimum contribution, which is basically, you don't get to cut back.
What parts of the school budget as a town, if any, do we have control over as far as expenses versus the mandates that we're facing all the time? Are there portions of that that can be looked at?
80% of the school's expense is related to employer costs, salaries,
Which is
wages,
all union.
hourly, benefits, taxes.
Well, I just see that obviously this continues to rise where our town departments don't always have that choice to increase their budgets with 2%, 3%, 9%, whatever it may be. And I don't know if it's maybe time for our town to start looking at redistricting with a new district. Now, Pioneer is not the only choice that we have, and it's not a committed long-term contract. We got the Turners Falls, Montague, Marha Regional.
I personally like the idea of romancing Gill, say, and growing the district. But small Western Mass towns, in all cases, have declining school populations. So it seems to me that perhaps trying to get Irving involved with us, and they run their own elementary school, and I believe tuition their kids out. And Gill's part of Montague, and they're a very small town. That's kind of my thinking, rather than, we do have equal representation, each of the 4 towns, even though Leiden's 7% and Warwick's 9-point-something%. We have the same representation on the school committee. We might get swallowed alive going into another neighboring district.
And what about, like you just suggested, where Irving is, as you said, contracting the students out, is that the term you used? Tuition. Why not something like that to school of their choices, as the town would supply the assessment?
Well, Irving has such a significant industrial tax base that the residential property tax, I believe, is about $4.
It's very cheap.
So there's not a lot of, they don't experience our pain in terms of
Revenue.
motivating them to make changes. So I'm not sure what it would take.
Okay,
But
thank you.
this was, I mean, I've advanced the idea of looking at downsizing, just dealing with our kids if possible, growing the district. But the fact remains, we've got fewer than 40 kids from Warwick in 8th grades, and things aren't getting any stronger in terms of population. It's just a situation we need to be creative and look at all our options. Hopefully there's going to be some relief. We'll find some way.
Thank you.
Okay. David, I just wanted to clarify something that you said earlier. So that difference between the appropriated FY15 and requested FY16 for the PBRS assessment, that difference of $70,000, you said most of that is from a change in the state formula?
Are you looking at
This here? This to this?
41,367 is due to the minimum contribution change.
Okay, so out of the 68?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So, one question that I have is, has the select board considered inviting our state representatives to meet with us as a town to say, you know, what's going on and how can we, what's the long-term plan here? Because I agree with Nick that, you know, for the school and the town to be yelling at each other is sort of the wrong way to go about this. We are both victims of a situation where we don't have control over what we're required to pay. The state is controlling that number, and the state rolls out the mandates and then doesn't pay for them, and so does the federal government. I mean, I'm an educator, I understand that. And so I just want towns and schools to stop yelling at each other and start talking to their elected officials at the state and federal level, because I think that's where the problem is here. And I will just say that as a parent of a PBRS student, I feel always just incredibly grateful for the quality of the experience that my boys are getting. And I feel like it's getting better and better and better. And I would not recommend considering another district. I mean, I've been an educator for a long time, and I've watched my kids, and I work in another district. But I do think that it's time for towns to call on their state representatives and their federal representatives and say, this is not tolerable. Martha?
Martha has something to say, Madam Chair. And I think it has to do with Representative Mark.
Yes, Representative Mark. He came to the meeting in Warwick, actually, the school board meeting. In, what was it, was your first meeting, David? It must have been November.
Memorable occasion.
And he got an earful. And he doesn't, let me see, he doesn't represent us, does he?
No,
No.
three other towns.
The other three towns. But I don't know if anything has come of it.
I mean, Stan
I'm sure he
Rosenberg
goes
is our
back.
senator right now, and he's the head of the Senate. This might be a good
Right.
time to initiate a conversation.
Because it's really, as you say, Sue, and I think you all acknowledge, it's impossible for us to solve this on our own. But
Yeah.
I just want to say, I agree with you spot on about Pioneer District. It's a level 1 school. There's a lot of schools and districts in this area that are level 2 or level 3 or worse. That does not mean, I'm not sitting here and saying kids can't get a good education at that, but Pioneer has been really in the forefront of staying compliant when what's required, and with moving things forward, Common Core, park exams, new teacher evaluations, all of these things are constantly being put into gear. And ever since I've been on the school committee, I mean, my kids went through the district 30 years ago. And as a parent, I wasn't even aware of what went into it. The music program at Pioneer is outstanding. The drama program is outstanding. And they do as well as they can with sports. You know, sports are sports. I mean, you either have the talent or you don't. Some years are better than others. But I'm really impressed with the caliber of teachers and the enthusiasm of the students. And the kids are great. And I've been to a lot of activities. And I would recommend to anybody sitting here, if you don't have kids in the school, go and see some of what's going on. You know, go to the events and you'll get a feeling for it. So I know we have to be able to afford it, but it's a really, really good district. We need to be careful not to lose that quality.
Well, I just did my taxes just in the nick of time, and the state tax rate, which is constitutionally set at 5%, the rate's 5.2. I was wondering how much greater you would like that rate to be, because our state is about $1 billion in the red. The revenue projections have things turning out as the economy grows, but this idea that the state's going to bail us out is, in the short term, not real. I mean, the Hawley selectmen think that the state should pay for the Wired West project, not the towns, and we'd all like somebody else to pay, but we have a lot of company in wanting more state aid, but the reality is the state's revenue side. So I think that from my standpoint, we need to look at everything and not have any sacred cows, not dismantle things for the fun of it. We need to be about outcomes. And I have some questions about the efficiency of operating at our scale. And we need to study. I would suggest for a start, the Mohawk District published a study that is worth reading, and I'll email it to anybody who wants it. And it places a lot of emphasis in the future on internet connectivity and distance learning. And the Mohawk District is one that couldn't get a district agreement for trying. The state legislature finally had to pound one down the throat and vote it. So we're not unique, but I think to look externally for funding this time is not realistic. And our state rep is a Republican, a freshman Republican. Do you see our Republican governor saying, yeah, let's increase taxes and increase local aid?
I think it's important to initiate a conversation. It's an obvious conversation that needs to happen. You know, this country acts like there's all this scarcity, and then we have an election, and money pours out of this country in ways that are obscene. So I would initiate the conversation. I just think that, that regional agreement was reneged on. And, our in lieu of land money was reneged on. I mean, at some point.
No, it wasn't. It actually pays us more than Chapter 61 lands. The state pays us more than privately held land in Chapter 61.
That wasn't what I understood.
No,
But
it's not.
I just
That's
think
the
the
truth.
conversation should happen, it really, it's happening to all towns right now. And, my son is in a class at Pioneer where 30 students in his class left to go to local private schools. It's a huge drain on that group and on the class itself. There's a lot of competition around here for schools. And I really value that school. So should invite Senator Rosenberg or someone here to talk to us about it.
Susanna Lee. Susanna Lee, our state rep. Why couldn't she come to our town meeting?
On a totally different subject, but still the budget. I'd just like to thank the police department for recommending a lower budget by $5,000 than last year. There's been a lot of pressure on them and they recognized it. And it's very,
I want to make sure the board is aware that there are 2 fire department capital items in here. One of them is to come from stabilizations, $12,300, which would allow us to make the 2,800 gallon used Mack truck that we got serviceable. And we have the opportunity to buy a rather impressive piece of fire apparatus from Northfield, which actually climbs our hills with a full 1,000 gallons of water with some authority, has the 1,500 gallon pump we're looking at. It's in here as a stabilization. I intend to move it to a borrowing article, $8,000 roughly a year for 3 years. And when I calculated the cost per residence to just buying it flat out for $25,000, it's going to cost each household about $65. So if we borrow it, it'll cost each household about $22 a year. We've taken good care of the police and the highway department recently with reasonable, reliable equipment. It's time to focus on the fire department, and the chief's assured me that by town meeting time, we'll see some construction on Bunker Hill, which I think will be important.
Thank you. Yes, Tom.
Yeah, I have a question for the board, which is that in the last few months, we've heard a lot of discussion about cutting different departments, and I realize we're talking about the budget now, but I'm just concerned that people may have suggestions about cutting different departments, and is this the place for them to bring it up, or should they be waiting for the town meeting or go to the finance committee? I would just rather know about what people have. If people have recommendations about cutting things, it seems like it would be better for us to know sooner rather than in a long town meeting.
I don't really see how we can do that. We have a good team, they're functioning effectively, cooperating. When you ask people a question and it's not necessarily their bailiwick, they don't say that's not my job description, they go and find out for you. So it's a tight operation. I don't see how we can cut it anymore.
I don't see the finance committee agreeing that we need to cut budgets by 50%. If that suggestion is made, it will be made by amendment on the town meeting floor.
Okay.
It's not supported by the selectmen or the finance committee.
I just wanted to raise the question now in case it wanted to be pursued prior to the town meeting, but it's your call how to handle it. One other thing, David, you mentioned that the recommended budget was a $20.48 tax rate. Can you tell us what the last couple of years were?
This year's 1992, last year was...
It's on page 10.
Page 10, okay, great.
One more question about page 10. So I'm just trying to understand this document. It says total amounts to be raised on line 470, and it looks like that's a negative number, negative 2.69. And then
Page what?
10. But then there's an increase in the tax rate down below on line 506.
I don't see any negative numbers on line 470.
Line 470, as you go across, minus 2.69.
The recommended FY16 number is 2.69 lower than the appropriated FY15 number. It's, you know, because 1,998,000 is less than 2,170,000.
Right, so when that says total amounts to be raised, does that mean that we need to have enough taxes to pay that number?
No, it's offset by the revenue side, by the revenue picture. So the total revenues, which in the recommended budget column T are 424,000, are subtracted from that, and you get the total from taxation.
Okay, 157.
So you got to look at all the lines in
Okay,
between.
well, that's
to
what
get there.
that's what I'm trying to understand. So when you say total amounts to be raised, that's the number that you then take your tax income and you relate it to that.
No, it's net
No.
of revenue. You have to,
Oh, okay, I see it, yeah. So 1998 less the 424 gets the 1573, which leads to the tax.
yes,
Okay.
which is a function of equalized valuation, and this is a reval year. So state thinks we're at 80 million, not 77. We'll see if the reval says that. But if the valuations go up, tax rate goes down, town yield's the same. This is just the way we apportion the taxes between you and I.
All right, so just want to make sure. So the total amount to be raised is, we have expenditures as a town. That's that 1998238 number.
Yeah.
We take the revenue number away from that. And those revenues are all those cherry sheets and grants and all that stuff that you were talking about. And that's what we then have to raise tax money to pay for, is the difference.
Right. And the total from taxation goes over the total valuation to calculate the tax rate. But all we really care about is our tax bill.
Right, helps me to know where the expenses come from.
Yes,
I noticed on the, and David brought it up earlier, that he was gonna use chapter 90 money to help fund the highway. Isn't it illegal to use money for salary out of chapter 90?
No.
As long as it's on an eligible project, you can't just hit that grant willy-nilly. But if you have an approved project to do a drainage project on the side of road X,
So,
then you allocate, then you mark your timesheets, you know, I was working on that project and gets allocated to
so
that.
our normal maintenance of the ditches and roads, you're gonna make into projects.
To the extent we can, and when we can't, it's gotta come out of taxation.
Okay.
500 after buying
Yeah, that's an amazing number.
it's an amazing number.
Nice
That's the
value
place where the
question.
state has said, hey,
See,
open the
see
war
what I mean
chest.
about
Yeah.
there's money somewhere for crying out loud? And this related to people's, I really heard people's concerns about Wired West that were here on fixed incomes and really struggling with the change and evolution. And I was just wondering, is there a way for grants to help? So if the town has to change in a way that is causing expense, and there are people on fixed income that can document that they are on fixed income, it's gonna be way harder for them to handle this than it is for me, say. Can we set up some kind of a system in our town with grants or some process where people can petition the town to say, I can't do that? And then maybe there's a pot of money that offsets that petition. I just feel like there must be some creative way for us to take care of each other.
What would be the pot of money? Where would we get, that's,
Kind of
the
abatement.
state did a bond bill and came up with 40 million to last mile for these communities. That's You know, that's not a loan, that's a grant, that's a gift. And they're being met with, they're not doing enough. Actually, they, you know, we got a certain amount of money that's called project equity that let me tell you what I came away with in the last couple of weeks, paying attention to Wired West, and that is, when I started out in business, I could go to the bank with what I thought was a pretty good business plan, and they would almost invariably tell me, no thank you. You could always trust the bank not to let you get in trouble. Then the pendulum swung, and people did get in trouble. Housing, businesses, junk borrowing, all kinds of stuff. I think the pendulum's back. I'm concerned that even if Warwick votes to authorize this bond debt, and the voters authorize the override, that we may still be begging to find somebody who says, we think that you're
They
good
cover
for
the
this.
bond.
You know?
I guess when you don't have enough, anything is too much, right? And I'm just saying, as a town, can we do that? I mean, as a citizen, I would pay into a fund for that sort of a thing. I don't wanna force anyone's out of their home, but sometimes we have to make change so that we can get new families to come, so that our whole town does work better.
I'm growing convinced that this project will be able to resolve itself, as we say in the business world. But there are cash flow implications. And so it may well hit a year or two of taxes before we get it, have the revenue stream from the project. In answer to your question, I suppose the town could say that rather than, I envision that Warwick Broadband will be able to meet the project costs for the first 3 years. The first 2 years are so minimal that the taxpayer wouldn't notice it, but they don't need to see that expense. And I think Warwick Broadband will have adequate revenues amassed to make that first year of real payments of $70,000, $80,000. And then it wouldn't touch any taxpayer. But the fourth year, if the third year hasn't brought revenues, that Wired West has written a check to the town, the taxpayer will be on the hook, even though we might have the money, just because of the timing of things. Rather than pay that third year, I suppose the selectmen could say we'll means test this and subsidize low-income people with the Warwick Broadband pot of money, and let it hit the taxpayers that can afford it. Progressive taxation is not a hallmark of property taxation. It'd be an interesting twist. I don't know if this would be legal, but we're thinking about it. I don't see Ford Foundation or Kellogg Foundation writing us a check to make this affordable. So I don't know what other source of
What are
funding.
the numbers? And maybe it's affordable for us collectively as a town.
We can't find the numbers.
Yeah.
As part of the business model, it clearly shows, the way it's set up now, that after year 6, that there's going to be not only revenue to pay back the towns, but there's going to be surplus revenue. And then it's up to us as being, if we continue with Wired West, to put our input in as to what happens to that. Rates could be lowered, low-income things could be offered, you could extend the network. There's a variety of options. I've also suggested a few times that if there are people that wanted to pay more, you know, they wanted to pay $59 or $69, you know, I don't know how it would work mechanically, but such things might be possible. The town of New Marlborough, which is one of the Wired West towns, has got a very significant contribution. I don't know how it's going to work, but it's going to severely change their tax impact. I don't know of anybody in Warwick that's in that kind of situation, but, you know.
Yes, Ron.
Well, the note of optimism for any senior citizens like myself, maybe you don't even have to be a senior citizen, on a fixed income, this is the first time I got the circuit breaker money back. So if your taxes go up, and you get money back from the state. You all know what I'm talking about with the circuit breaker?
Yeah.
No.
No.
Oh, if your gross income is over 10%, no, wait a minute, I'm doing it backwards.
Your tax bill.
If your tax bill is over 10% of your gross income, you get money back from the state.
And what birthday are we looking for before we're eligible for that?
I don't know, I guess it's
65
only
or
senior
70?
citizens, but it's the first time I've been able to get it, and I'm like, okay, taxes went up, got my money back from the state, it all evened out. So seriously, if you are a senior citizen and you haven't looked into that, and you're low income, make sure you do it.
There is a limit on that $1,200 though, which it just raised it this year. It used to be only $900.
$1,200, that would be sweet, I didn't get that.
Okay, do we have any correspondence?
You saw the press coverage for the solar settlement. Interesting article. But no correspondence. I already supplied the chapter 90 award letter to Chairman.
Do we have any select board reports? Patricia, you have anything to report? I can't hear you.
No.
Nothing.
Okay, thank you. Nick, do you have any?
No.
Okay. So, coordinator report, anything?
Just that I agreed to invite and publicize candidates for town office to a meet and greet on April 8th, which is a Friday.
May 8th.
Both.
Yeah.
It says April, but
It says April, but you mean May.
And what day is today?
It's Friday, May 8th is what you're talking
I
about.
hope it's April 8th, because I haven't finished my taxes.
You sure you don't qualify for that tax?
I think I do. You can back me up. May 8th, I'm sorry, folks. And there will be both, I mean, obviously a lot of folks work, so can't attend in the daytime. There'll also be evenings. Guild will provide refreshments. I hope that everybody will have an opportunity to make some kind of statement, but mostly.
Is this an evening?
There's both at the gathering place on Friday,
It's Friday.
May 8th, at noon, and then again from 6 to 8. And candidates, don't worry, I will contact you. Formal invitation notice.
And you'll get cookies.
Guild is on my side on this.
All right.
Okay.
You and I had a conversation this afternoon about Bernardston and the school's budget. And I noticed that there was nothing about that in your report, and suggested that it needed to be your priority number one to work on Bernardston joining us in a no vote against the district if that's where things are going. And I think you said yes, so hopefully your next report, we'll talk about that.
And since we spoke this afternoon, I did speak to the chairman of the Bernardston Selectmen, and he told me that their finance committee is basically okay with a 2.5% assessment increase. So, I don't know what that means to us, if that
Yeah.
makes things better or worse, but hopefully by Thursday.
Okay.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Roll call vote.
Roll call vote. So moved by Nick Argyrow.
Don Maggie, aye. Patricia?
Official.
She's gone.
Yeah.
Adjourn.